With a rich cultural history and itself becoming a democracy in the 1990s, the Czech Republic and Taiwan share some similarities. However, lesser known are their defense and security ties which are now strengthening amidst increasing pressure from Beijing. So we are here in Prague to find out just where these two countries stand. Jakub Janda is the director of the European Values Center for Security Policy, the first European think tank with a presence in Taipei. He has years of experience in defense innovation and knows firsthand how Taiwan and Europe are moving closer.
The situation in Central Europe is relatively similar to Taiwan, but we here in Central Europe have the advantage of having multiple allies, given our geography, and also given that Russia is much weaker than China. So at this moment what is happening is that essentially Central European governments are essentially doubling their own militaries in terms of scope, funding or personnel. There is a massive surge of effectively purchasing weapons, but there's also something what Taiwan can learn from, and that's, for example, the drone warfare, UAVs, unmanned vehicles, this is the core of the fight in Ukraine, and there are countries in Central Europe who are learning from that. Because, for example, innovation circle, so how quickly do these drones get better in terms of how they operate, that's all very, very short, only in a matter of single weeks, for example, sometimes. And that's where Taiwan really needs to learn from this, which is not easy, but there are countries like Czech Republic which are actually helping Taiwan in first having access in Ukraine, in supporting Ukraine, like in humanitarian assistance, for example, but also in, for example, dual use technologies, where there could be, for example, Czech-Taiwanese cooperation on the business side in either assisting Ukraine today and learning from how they operate, for example, the drones, because that's exactly what Taiwan is preparing for itself.
So Taiwan, they are starting to mass produce drones. This is a national security ambition of Taiwan. But if they start producing a bunch of drones this year, next year, and it comes to 2027, 2028, 2029, how can they ensure that these drones that they're producing now stay relevant for the next 3 years?
It's difficult. Admittedly, it's difficult because of Taiwan's capacity compared to China's capacity. So very understandably, Taiwan has a difficult position to do. But what usually is being done is that you essentially start purchasing the hardware, the physical stuff, and then what happens is that there are innovations on the software. So on the kind of brains, on the kind of intellectual part of the command center of the drone, for example. And that's something what happens quite often because at the end it's about the mass of scale. So what are the numbers which you can easily deploy, but also importantly, if you have enough personnel which can first produce, but then also put them in combat. So essentially run these drones, not only the pilots, but also the logisticians who need to better understand how to put them in the field as well. Usually it's been seen as a specialist tool for ISR, for surveillance or intelligence collection, but this is a centerpiece of the combat itself today.
So we see that drone warfare largely pertains to ground battles, but it's also going to impact naval warfare. And Taiwan being an island, there's going to be a lot of naval warfare involved. What capacities have we seen drones taking up in naval warfare?
Mm-hmm. If you listen to the US Commander for Indo-Pacific, Admiral Paparo, he talks about a strategy called Hellscape. And the logic there is that the Taiwan Strait should essentially become a hell for the possible invading forces from China. And he mainly refers to effectively undersea drones, which could actually present quite a lot of traps for a possible invasion flotilla, for effectively vessels coming from China with soldiers potentially. So there are very practical technical, but also organizational or military lessons, which I know Taiwan tries to learn from Ukraine.
We know that there's a lot of collaboration between the Czech Republic and Taiwan. Not a lot of it is public. Are there any numbers or specific innovation ideas that you can share with us?
Mm-hmm. I can talk about several things which are publicly known, but they may be not widely known. So for example, there is an official cooperation between MGIB, Ministry of Justice Investigation Bureau from Taiwan, which is a police and country intelligence agency, and their Czech counterpart, for example. That's something what is publicly known. They have officially signed all their cooperation plans as well, and they visit each other regularly, which is publicly known as well, exchange a lot about effectively intelligence matter when it comes to China. The other thing I can mention, which is relatively unique unique in European context, is cooperation between national defense universities. So Czech and Taiwanese national defense universities have their own official cooperation where they exchange quite a lot of military knowledge, which is de facto military to military cooperation because they are both military universities. Almost no other European countries dare to do this because they are afraid of Chinese counter-pressure, but on the Czech side, this is, for example, happening.
Aside from drone warfare, what is the most important security or defense innovation going on right now in the industry?
I would say the command and control systems, which are being updated, I have to say, because, for example, what NATO countries try to teach to Ukrainian defenders has been quite well outdated. And we could see on the development on the battlefield in Ukraine over the last, let's say, 3+ years. And essentially the way how we train for smaller units, for example, so we call it combat of small units, has changed quite dramatically in terms of how they deploy, how they use the drones, how they work on combat casualties, so on military medicine, for example. So that has changed quite a lot. And that's why Ukraine, unfortunately for Ukraine, is a laboratory of effectively not military science only, but also military organization. So there is, for example, NATO understood this. So NATO has established a NATO command center in Poland, which is only focusing on learning from Ukraine and getting those lessons to NATO individual militaries. That's how important it is.
Defense innovation, like Jakub talked about, will be critical for continued security. However, what about specific programs bringing Europe and Taiwan closer together? In 2023, Taiwan awarded Czech Senator Pavel Fischer the Friendship Medal of Diplomacy, so he's the perfect person to ask about the status of Czech-Taiwan ties. Senator, thank you very much for your time today. I want to start off asking, on a score of about 1 to 10, where are Czech and Taiwan ties right now?
8.
That's good. That's a good score.
That's a good score, but I think that on the Czech side, for instance, we can do more. We can be more bold. And I think that even though the leaving government was my government, I was fighting for it and I was voting for it, I think that they could do much more. And this is something that now, when the new government comes, we as the Senate have to have a look for and check where we can do more and provide the necessary political backing.
You travel to Taiwan quite frequently. Can you talk a little bit about what you're hearing when you travel to Taiwan, what Taiwan's legislators are talking to you about?
At the end of the day, the challenges that we see in both countries, I mean Czech Republic and Taiwan, are very similar. We speak about energy supply and robust energy supply need. We speak about securizing supply chains. We speak about resilience of our societies. And I think that this Russian aggression against Ukraine brought a huge wake-up call to us in Europe, but I think that more globally, that winning the war, it is not only about military, but also the whole society approach. And the nexus between military and, for instance, civilian, secure fighters, firefighters and others, this nexus is extremely important in managing the threats of the war. We try to understand what kind of challenge the threat of this technological war, also with traditional weaponry, provides to us who would like to help Ukraine and also defend our democracy.
Are there any specifics that you can go into about sharing maybe on civilian resilience between the Czech Republic and Taiwan?
Yes, and with my counterparts in the Legislative Yuan, we exchange on this oftentimes. How, for instance, having this strategic dependency on energy supplies from outside invites us to rethink also the potential of securing the supply of energy in times of crisis, be it not only for days, but for months and for a longer time. This is something that our country succeeded to do with the close cooperation within European Union, because we succeeded to change our more than 90% dependency on Russian oil and gas to something which is much different as picture. Today we have also solutions for our nuclear fuel, for our nuclear power plants, and before we were 100% dependent on Russia. So this is something that we succeeded to deal with, and I have to say that the Czech government, which is now leaving, succeeded here with the best outcomes possible.
In the past weeks, we have seen offers between Russia and the United States where the peace proposals have chopped up Ukraine's map, and Ukraine has rejected these peace proposals. In the spectrum of looking at this negotiated battlefield for an end of the war, what implications do you think there are for countries like Taiwan?
What was for me the most shocking in the first draft of this peace plan that we studied 10 days ago was the total absence of the rule of law, of the recognition that there is an aggressor, that there are victims of crimes for which we have universal jurisdiction, and we are obliged as countries and as citizens to deal with these crimes unless the perpetrators are followed by justice. And this absence of justice is for me maybe even more dangerous globally than speaking about some temporary occupation of some parts of the territory. And then, if you listen to Beijing threatening Taiwan by the use of force, we see that there is also a breach of UN Charter and principles. So I think that we have to be extremely attentive to this, because the breach by Russia, the disrespect by Russia of the United Nations principles, supported or with the complicity of Beijing, might be tomorrow the other way around, if Beijing would like to use the force and the threat, realize the threat against Taiwan. This is so serious that I think that even with the first draft of any peace or truce solution, we have to speak about justice. This is a question of humanity, and this is the reason why I was so puzzled by the text. The rule of law is a principle which has a continuity from our internal legal system or constitution, be it Czech Republic, for instance, and there is a continuity to the international law and vice versa. So if we start to disrespect the rule-based order, we are putting in danger our own domestic order and constitution framework. And for this reason, we have to be extremely cautious. And this is the reason why we have to realize that the principle of sovereignty based on self-determinance of citizens and of people is something that we have to cherish and not to put aside. And I fear that we have here a huge potential for delivering better, we as politicians, but also as states.
Thank you for watching this episode of Zoom In, Zoom Out from Prague. For more stories covering Taiwan's defense and security, you can download the Taiwan Plus app or follow us on social media. Until next time.